Precious, I now know the secret to acing our exams.
Really? Tell me how.
Well, I can't tell you, but just trust me, it works.
No, that's not fair because if you're making a claim like that, you have to prove it. Like what's and where's the evidence?
So, unless I got proof, my claim doesn't hold up?
You're right, and that's what we're about to tackle today.
A claim is a statement that asserts something as true. It is the central argument or point that a writer or speaker wants to convey. Claims are often presented as statements of fact, opinion, or belief, and they are often supported by evidence and reasoning. For example, when someone claims that exercise improves mental health, they can support it with evidence based on science, like how some studies show that exercise releases endorphins, which results in reducing stress. Therefore, claims really do help in critical thinking, debates, and even academic writing.
There are two types of claim: explicit claim and implicit claim.
Explicit claims are claims that are stated clearly and expressed fully in a text so that it will not leave any room for confusion, vagueness, or ambiguity. Therefore, it doesn't leave room nor space for misinterpretation. For example, Spanish will never be the language generally spoken in the country. The people will never speak it. Each people has its own way of thinking. You are trying hard to divest yourselves of your own personality as a people. You forget that as long as people preserve its language, it retains a token of its liberty, just as man retains his freedom so long as he preserves his own independence of thought. A language expresses the ideas and ideals of a people. The passage is explicit because it clearly states its main argument without ambiguity. It directly claims that Spanish will never be the dominant language and that language is essential to a nation's identity and freedom.
Implicit claims, on the other hand, are claims that are not expressed clearly in the text, but are being suggested to be the meaning of the text implied. For example, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. This text shows an implicit claim as it doesn't directly state a specific argument, but rather implies a belief or assumption through the use of evocative language and symbolism.
Now we know how claims work. Without evidence to support it, your claim wouldn't be that convincing to others.
Exactly. Maybe next time, I should gather evidence to support my claim too.
You know what, Feby? I learned so much about claims.
Really? Tell me more about it.
Well, studies show that clear communication leads to better understanding. Therefore, having a strong claim is the most important part of getting your point. So, to make sure you're understood, you should always start by stating your claim clearly and then back it up with reasons and evidence.
That's so interesting, Ash. But did you know that you just gave me some examples of types of claims?
I did?
Yes, and now we will be talking about the types of claim.
Claim of fact. Claims of fact are claims that are derived from factual information like definition, data, history, or causal connections. A claim of fact must be supportable. It can be counted or measured using empirical observation. It debates whether the statement of the claim is correct or incorrect, valid or invalid, true or false. Examples: the implementation of K-12 in the Philippines increased the time of students at school by 2 years. There are 30 people in the room. If 20 of them are male, then I can imply that 10 of them are female.
Next is claim of policy. A claim of policy argues that certain conditions should not exist. They promote courses of action for problems that need a solution. They almost always include the keywords should, ought to, or must. These are specific and measurable actions that need to be done to address issues or concerns presented in an argument or proposition. For example, an individual must be at least 18 years old in order for him or her to apply for a driver's license. Second, reckless drivers should have mandatory jail term of not shorter than 2 months. Children in low-income families should receive medical insurance from the government.
Now, how do you defend your claims of policy? First, convince your audience that a problem exists. Second, make your proposal clear. Third, establish that there is a need for a change. Fourth, consider the opposing arguments. Fifth, devote the major part of your essay to providing that your proposal answers the opposing arguments and that there are distinct benefits for your readers in adopting your proposal. Sixth, support your proposal with a solid data, but don't neglect the moral considerations and the common sense reasons, which may be even more persuasive.
And for the last type, the claim of values. A claim of value is based on preference such as likes or dislikes, whether it is good or bad. It is a claim with qualifiable assertion. It is an argument about a moral, static, or philosophical value. It involves judgments, appraisals, and evaluation. For example, it is better to have love and lost than never to have love at all. Another one is drug abuse is not an option if you have problems.
That is so amazing, Feby. I never knew the claim has its own type. Not only that I can use this information for my academic writing, but also in my communication skills.
That's right, Ash. Using these types of claim can make our communication and writing useful in everyday life.
Hey Shervin, have you ever wondered how we can access so much information online?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's because of something called hypertext.
That's right. Hypertext is a way of presenting nonlinear format using links to connect related ideas and concepts.
That's interesting, but a lot of people keep on asking me on how hypertext really works. Can you give us an example?
Well, let's say you're reading an article online and you come across a term you didn't understand. Using hypertext, you can click on that term and be taken to a new page with more information about it.
Oh, that's right. And these links allow us to navigate through information in a dynamic and interactive way, creating our own path through the content.
That's so cool! And hypertext also enables us to create our own meaning from the material, learning associatively and exploring topics in depth.
Absolutely. The World Wide Web is a global hypertext system, connecting millions of people around the world.
Why hypertext? In a hypertext system, the reader is free to navigate information by exploring the connections provided. Hypertext is a very different way of presenting information than the usual linear form. Text no longer flows in a straight line through a book. Instead, it is broken down into many smaller units, to borrow a term from literary criticism, each addressing a few issues. It acts as a bridge between two basic, opposite, and complementing elements that may be called gender of knowledge representation, free and shortcut. Thanks for explaining hypertext to me, Sherv. I feel like I understand it so much better now.
No problem, Eman. It's always fun to learn something new.
Intertext refers to the way a text is connected to another text. This connection can happen in different ways, such as directly quoting another work, borrowing ideas, or using similar themes and styles. Writers often use intertext to add a deeper meaning to their work, make references that readers may recognize, or create a dialogue between different texts. So you know how sometimes a book or a movie just feels like it's connected to something else? That's what we call intertext. It's basically the way a text links up with another one. This can happen in a bunch of ways, like when the author quotes another piece directly, take inspiration from an idea, or even just share similar themes or styles. Writers often use intertext to add layers of meaning or to throw in references that might resonate with readers.
Arthur is a simple boy who finds out he is meant to be a king, and Harry Potter is a regular boy who learns he is a famous wizard. They both have magical weapon. Arthur pulls the sword Excalibur from the stone to prove he is the true king, and Harry pulls the sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat to defeat evil. They both have mentor. Arthur has Merlin, a powerful wizard who guides him, and Harry has Dumbledore, a wise wizard who helps him. And both of them have an enemy. Arthur fights Morgana and other enemies who want power. Harry fights Voldemort, who also wants power.
Next, we have three types of intertext: appropriation, allusion, and parody.
The first one is appropriation. Adaptation, meaning old becomes new. In other words, borrowing from another text. reinterpretation, and reimagining an existing text and making it new. This means that sometimes a movie is being edited or some characters are added to make the story alive again.
Allusion. An allusion is a reference to a person, event, place, work of art, literature, or cultural phenomenon, often from history, mythology, or religion that the writer assumes the audience will recognize and understand. This can be a reference to another text and can be also a reference to a person or place or event, and the audience or reader has to make the connection. This means that it's always referring to another text or subject, just like a person, place, or event to make another context.
Next, we have the four types of allusion. First is the literary allusion. This refers to a reference within a literary work to another literary work or figure. It assumes the reader has some familiarity with the original source. These references are often indirect, meaning the connection between the literary works are implied rather than being stated. For example, saying someone's weakness is their Achilles heel is a literary allusion to the Greek myth of Achilles, who was invulnerable except for his heel. According to the myth, Achilles' mother, Thetis, dipped him into the river Styx, which was said to confer invulnerability. She held him by his heel, and this spot did not come into contact with the magical water, leaving it vulnerable. As a result, Achilles was invincible everywhere except for his heel. During the Trojan War, Achilles was killed by an arrow that struck his heel. The arrow was often said to have shot by Paris, the prince of Troy, with the help of God of Apollo. The wound was fatal, and thus Achilles' heel became synonymous with a person's sole point of vulnerability, no matter how otherwise strong or protected they may seem.
Next is cultural. Is when something in a story, speech, or conversation refers to a well-known idea, person, event, or tradition from a particular culture. It helps people understand the message better by connecting it to something familiar. It draws on collective experiences, ideas, and symbols that people from a particular society or a community share. With this, they rely on the collective knowledge and experiences of a given community, making them deeply meaningful for those who recognize them, but potentially inaccessible to those without that background. For example, saying he has a Midas touch in business means someone is very successful in making money. This cultural allusion to King Midas from Greek mythology, who turned everything he touched to gold. The term Midas touch has become a widely recognized phrase in the English language, symbolizing the ability to succeed in any venture, especially in financial or business endeavors. Someone with Midas touch is seen to having the ability to turn everything they touch into success, much like the original myth, where everything Midas touched turned into gold.
Next we have is biblical. This refers to a reference in literature, speech, or art to a story, character, or passage from the Bible. It is used to enhance meaning or understanding. For example, he had the patience of Job. This alludes to Job from the Bible who endured immense suffering but remained faithful to God. It implies that the person is very patient despite of hardships. The phrase, the patience of Job, has become a powerful symbol of perseverance, faith, and resilience in the face of suffering. Job's story teaches that patience doesn't mean passivity or denial of suffering, but it means enduring hardship with faith, seeking meaning in suffering, and accepting that some things may be beyond human understanding.
Next is historical. This involves referencing an historical event, figure, or period. It can invoke specific emotions or associations related to that historical context. For example, referring to something as Waterloo in a context of a decisive defeat alludes to the Battle of Waterloo where Napoleon was defeated. It's because of the famous Battle of Waterloo in 1815. It was called Napoleon's final stand. Napoleon Bonaparte was a powerful leader who had conquered much of Europe. The Battle of Waterloo was his last attempt to regain power after he had been defeated and sent away. Napoleon's army was defeated decisively. It wasn't just a small setback, it was a complete and utter loss that ended his career. Because of how important Napoleon was and how complete his defeat was, Waterloo became a symbol of final and irreversible failure.
And lastly, we have parody. Parody is a fun imitation of a serious piece of literature, writing, or art music. It pokes fun at something to entertain the audience or the reader. In other words, creating parodies can be a fun and creative way to express yourself. It allows you to put your spin on existing works and share your unique sense of humor. Essentially, a parody is more than just a silly imitation. It's a form of creative expression that can be used to entertain, educate, and provoke thought.
Claims, intertext, and hypertext are key concepts in both literary interpretation and communication. Claims are contentious statements that can be divided into three groups. Claims of fact, which base their arguments on facts. For example, illegal mining has become an issue. Claims of value, which base their conclusions on beliefs held by the individual or by society. For example, school is the most important part of education. Or claims of policy, which demand action. For example, we need modernization. Hypertext is digital text that contains hyperlinks that allow for nonlinear navigation and direct readers to related resources, such as ebooks or Wikipedia pages. In contrast, intertext is the interaction between a text and other text that determines its meaning. It might be explicit, like in Cinderella remakes, implicit, like in Spaceball parodies, or elusive, like in subtle references. When taken as a whole, these ideas improve comprehension and involvement across topics.
That's it, guys.
Thank you for listening.
Bye!